I knew I know I'm gonna cry, so I'm gonna I'm gonna try not to. ILTA gives a number of awards, and they're all very prestigious and very competitive. And like yesterday, we had the Transformative Project of the Year presentations, which were amazing. But the Lifetime Achievement Award is something very special. Talks about someone who has given so much of their time and their talent and their insight and their experience and their wisdom. And it was very competitive. And all three of our finalists this year were people. I mean, there's the cool Ray Z, as we call him, from World Docs. There is the gracious and brilliant Alvin Tejamulia. But the winner was my dear friend and colleague, Judi Flournoy. And I just can't think of anybody better. I mean, before we even met, I would watch her present and think, oh my gosh, if I could only be as collected and measured and brilliant as this person, then I would have a great career. And then we served together as officers. We were officers together. We got elected to the board together. I actually have a T-shirt somewhere that I should have dragged out for this, that has the picture of Judi and myself and Jim McKenna and Dave Regali, who all served 6 years together on the board on Mount Rushmore. So I was there when Judi was president. Then she supported me in my term when I was president. She was on the board. Our friendship grew deep and lifelong. And my admiration for her as a colleague has just gone up. My admiration for her as a human, I can't even begin to say. And I'm just so delighted to have her in our world, and to have her as a friend is an immeasurable blessing. So let me introduce.
Welcome, Judi, and that's a great introduction. Congratulations, Judi.
Thank you. Thank you, Joy.
Bless you. I've actually got someone else coming on to also give their introduction. So Lisa from Fireman & Co, who I happen to know, she submitted these proposals for your nomination and for your award, and I asked Lisa to come on as well to say congratulations, and also to talk a little bit about why you've won, and then I've got some stuff to say. But Lisa, welcome. Lisa Stone from Fireman & Co, welcome. I know you want to join us in congratulating Judi.
I do. Thank you so much. Can you see me and hear me?
Yes.
Judi Flournoy, the only regret I have is that we can't hug the shit out of you. So next year we'll have to have a special drink and party to really celebrate this in person. But what Judi has done for us in the legal community, and particularly women, is immeasurable. And I'm going to cry too. So
knock it off, you guys.
So there's lots of leaders out there that speak a great game, right? But it's what you do, right? It's what you do in the world. It's how you treat people. It's the respect you give others. It's the opportunities that you give others. It's the acknowledgement. It's the gentle pushes that we need, right? Especially as women in an industry full of men, right? The gentle nudges and pushes that we need to shine and to allow ourselves to be great, that you demonstrate to all of us. And I want to thank you.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Thank you.
I know, I mean, I've got tons of questions for you, Judi, but I just wanted to share, you will get a speaking part, as this is about you, not about us.
It's okay, keep going.
But I wanted to outline, so I haven't really introduced you properly, so let me introduce you properly. I wanted to let everyone do the emotional bit, because I know it means a lot to so many people, so I'm so grateful to you for introducing Judi. But so I just wanted to say, I'm sure everybody does know you, but I haven't introduced you properly. So obviously you've been CIO of Kelley Drye since 2012, responsible for IT strategy and everything. I've written down a whole paragraph. We know implementation, supervising 3 directors, 7 managers. You've got a real seat at the table as well. I think that really jumps out for me. 2020, and you've been an active member of ILTA for 22 years. You're chair of the membership task force helping ILTA to modernize its structure, if that's the right way to describe it, and among other things. And you've been treasurer of the ILTA board of directors and director of the board of directors. And just to share, so I don't know if I'm at liberty to say who everyone knows who these people are that submitted these, I'm sure, but anyway, the letter of recommendation, someone else on this panel may have known something about it. But so when I think of that, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just wanted to pick out a few points. So when I think of an accomplished leader, I think of Judi. I think of an advocate for developing people and a woman. When I think of women in STEM, I think of Judi. When I think of a trusted advisor and a pillar of the ILTA community, I think of Judi. And that you consistently embody an inspiring blend of leading, teaching, and serving others. That's a real theme that comes through. You give selflessly to your peers, spent countless hours sharing your experience, which I want to come on to how on earth you've got time. I have also been received the benefit of your time. Had an advocate of diversity and inclusion, served in multiple positions as I've just outlined. And then again, you know, this comes through time and time again in the second letter of submission. You're generous, go out of your way to help others, participate in presentations. And then I know you also, in 2017, you got approval in terms of innovation as well. So you've really made your mark. Obviously, there's been a number of different things in terms of technology that in terms of milestones that you've achieved. But in 2017, you got approval from the managing partner at Kelley Drye to create Skunkworks Lab, which tested the water of innovation initiative. You convened a group of lawyers and staff, and you put together a design thinking workshop, an empathy interview, and it identified a pain point that was troublesome to a client. And then you brainstormed prototypes. The firm worked with an outside developer to build a custom technology solution. And the client was really pleased with how it went. And Kelley Drye was able to reconfigure the technology and scale it to others. And I know that in May 2020, that was recognized by the Clock as one of the top 3 submissions for the 2020 Legal Innovation and Operations projects of this sort. And in 2019, the managing partner officially designated it Kelley Drye's Client Service and Innovation Committee. And I just wanted to flag those things because obviously all of those things contributed towards your award. And I just wanted to ask you, so there's as much emphasis on your personal skills as your technological skills, technical achievements. Do you think that there's a lesson for people, Judi, in the industry? Does that sort of speak volumes? I know it's talking about yourself, but anyway.
Well, that's a kind of complicated question, isn't it? Because if you really were to look at the arc of my career, I started out as a very technical person, but my staff today wouldn't let me near a data center. You know, I mean, it was a joke actually when I worked for Proskauer. It was a joke that I was one of the most technical, geeky people in the room, and in fact, they did a video of it. That video is somewhere. It was a parody that they did because I was full of acronyms and things of that nature. So long before I learned how to actually speak with people, I guess. So, but I think really what I would say is beyond the technical side of that is respecting people that are of highly technical skills and recognizing those people and empowering them to do the work that you need them to do for you and working with you. I think that's extraordinarily important, is understanding there are people in the room who know more than you do, and to respect that and to embrace that and to support it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And how do you find the time? I've spoken to you and I found you so, even in the, you know, not spoken often, but found you incredibly giving of your time. I can kind of relate on a small level. Is it, I mean, it sounds like a dumb question, but I'm genuinely interested. Are you just particularly organized, or how do you make time for people where you clearly do?
I feel it's important. And so I carved that time out. I think that having interactions with people, connecting with them, even if it's in brief conversation, if it's in person, it's wonderful. These days, obviously it can't be, but still those connections are really important because we have opportunities to learn from one another. And it's those sort of informal conversations I find I learn most from, because people are more relaxed. And when people are relaxed, they tend to be more open in an interesting way. And so I make sure that I afford myself that kind of time to have those opportunities.
And how did you talk about learning you've obviously now got a seat at the management table and have done for a long time. I mean, it's interesting that you started talking now in acronyms, and you've obviously had a long journey, and what skills or achievements can you attribute that to? How did you evolve?
I think that one of the key things is observing others that you think are actually really good at what they do. Listening attentively, asking questions. As Gio was saying that in his keynote this morning, is don't fear rejection, seek the rejection, then ask why. And I think was sort of a summary of what he was talking about today. So from my perspective, it's really been about those others who came either before me or I've walked alongside of. I mean, Kurt is a good example. Sherry is a good example. Lisa's one of the most brilliant engineers I know. And she never, I think, will tell you that she is, but she really is. And I'm not just saying that, but she really is brilliant. And I've had such great opportunities to work with her through the years. So it's that opportunity to connect with people who have come before you, who are extraordinarily good at what they do, and then learning from them. And I really think that that's really been a big part of the arc of my career, is learning from others. Those who came before me and those who walk alongside of me. And I think all of us really walk alongside each other.
Yeah, that's lovely. Feel free, guys, Lisa and Joy, if you want to jump in at any point. If anyone else wants to jump in, but I would love to know, what is your career? I guess I have to ask you this. We're given this award. I feel like I have to. What's your career highlight to date?
To date? Wow.
Yeah, because I'm not suggesting with these Lifetime Achievement Awards, sometimes people go, well, I have got more stuff to do. So
yeah, I have more mountains to climb, but here's a couple things I would say real quickly. One is I work with such really wonderful people. My teams have always been terrific people, smart, funny, creative, great problem solvers, interesting in each in their own unique way. That has been, I think, the gift of my career, is the people that I work with, both those who work internal to my organizations and those like Lisa, who I work with, and Sherry and Kurt, and Joy when she was on the other side, that I've had the opportunity to work with. So for me, that's really been a big part of it, and I want to continue that. My hope for the people that I work with is they achieve all the things they want to achieve, and if I can help them get there, that's part of what I want to be able to do. And that's why I got involved with the Monica Bay STEM Leadership Award, why I've been so involved in ILTA through the years, and why I've given of my time. Is it's not about me, it's really about everybody else, truly.
And that's one of Judi's hallmarks. It's her humility. You asked her about herself and she only talks about other people. Very consistent and a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I wanted to say, one of the things, women in tech is something you're very passionate about, and I know you've been very active. I don't even know where to start with that, really. Like, obviously there's been some progress. What more? I mean, maybe this isn't the time to ask you this, but I wanted to ask you anyway. So what more do you think needs to be done? I feel there's a lot more needs to be done, but people need to be as giving of their time, perhaps, and also perhaps being brave enough to speak out, like, in some of the keynote, perhaps, or what's your thoughts in terms of how we drive that further?
I think the first thing is that organizationally, each organization needs to look inward first and identify where there's unconscious bias and look for opportunities for women to succeed within their organizations. And I think that's very difficult, frankly, largely because most organizations, including mine, are predominantly men.
Yeah.
They come into technology in a variety of ways. They get there in a variety of ways. Some of them do it intentionally, some of them do it accidentally. But it's finding those women who actually have curiosity and good problem solving skills and then giving them opportunities to succeed. And I think you really have to lift them up, because they won't, unfortunately, many of them won't do it themselves. Now, having stated that, I think that generationally, the younger generation of women are more apt to do it, more willing to do it than, say, my generation, right? The other thing that I will suggest is that not every person approaches problem solving and interactions in the same way. What I'm trying to say here is that if you are in a leadership position, it's really important to observe people. when they're in a setting where there are others around them, to see how they interact, how they, what's the exchange, how do they get their ideas across, and then seek opportunities to help mentor them. That doesn't mean a formal mentoring program. It really means taking them inside and having an opportunity to chat with them and say, I get what you were trying to get to, what you were trying to get across, but let's talk about how you might have come to that conversation a little bit differently to help you succeed in really sharing your knowledge and your experience and your skill in a way that can be, a powerful impact to your organization, to your team, or wherever you're trying to impart your knowledge. Because part of it is getting other people to listen. And I think that this has been, and I think others in this chat could certainly verify this. It is sometimes difficult in a room for women to be heard. You'll have a extraordinarily talented engineer in the room who happens to be a woman among a table full of men. And the woman will say exactly the thing is, this is how I'm going to help you solve your problem. And then they'll turn to the man and he'll basically repeat what the woman said.
Mansplaining.
So,
sorry, Kat.
right. And so where we really then have to encourage men is to advocate for us, which is to redirect back and say, well, if you heard whoever that person was in that moment, I'll pick on Lisa. If you heard Lisa explain that to you, here's how Lisa can help you get that accomplished. So, or Sherry for that matter. I mean, I've known Sherry forever, it seems, Sherry.
Long time.
And we have been down many paths together, but she has a unique ability to get people to hear her. It's not just so much listening, it's actually hear what she's saying. And that's a skill. And I think part of it is tenacity. It's that willingness to just keep going at it, keep going at it, keep going at it.
I'd love you to stay on. We're going to hear from Sherry about the diversity session yesterday. So Sherry and maybe Lisa and Joy, if you're able to. I mean, we're going to run on till about the half past, to the hour. So I'll try and, but just quickly, Judi, do you think? So do you think, in terms of ILTA now, I know you've been a passionate supporter. I guess this is probably my last question, and then let's go to Sherry. And would love to hear, and I'd love you to be all involved in this diversity session that you're reporting on. So I'm going to finish on this in terms of your award before we all congratulate you again. But so ILTA, you've and cry. Hopefully we'll do a bit more crying as well, because that would be like nice, dramatic. You've given really generously to ILTA, and I know that this is something that ILTA is going through, as every other organisation is. This transition in terms of moving more virtual, and now is a really important time. And I just wanted to say, perhaps you to communicate to people listening why it's important more than ever to give their time to ILTA.
Interesting question. Here's what I would say about giving time to ILTA. First of all, clearly, my career is where it is in large part to ILTA. I mean, really, it gave me opportunities to learn how to publicly speak. It gave me opportunities to learn how to build consensus. It gave me opportunities to learn how to lead a team, to problem solve in interesting ways. I mean, we literally did team building events in the early years on a beach with a bunch of pipe to get water from the ocean back to the sand. I mean, this goes in the way back machine, to go back that far. My point being is this: ILTA is uniquely positioned because of its core values, because how it celebrates people individually and the collective of people working together. That is really the heart of ILTA, is our willingness to be open and to share. And so for anyone who's thought, well, I'm on the fringe, I don't really feel like I have time, or I don't know where I would contribute, my message is, get in there. Don't be afraid. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with trying, number one. Don't fear rejection, number two, going back to the keynote this morning. But also, there's so much more to be gained from whatever you put in. You're going to get out 10 times what you put into it.
Yeah. I would say for women leaders, and we have lots of work to do, I think, within ILTA and within society at large, to deal with other kinds of unconscious bias and discrimination. But ILTA has a long history of women in leadership. And I think it's proved to be a very safe place for women to learn really deep serious growth-inducing leadership skills, solving real problems for a real business. I mean, I think it's easy to think of ILTA as a club in the good ways that a club is, but it's also a business that employs people and creates business opportunities for sponsors and growth opportunities for members. And being in a volunteer role is a great way to learn how to be a leader in business. And there have been a lot of women who have had very senior leadership roles within the organization as volunteers that I think is disproportionate to what we see in the workplace. And I think that's been very positive for women's
It
careers.
feels like a safe place, doesn't it? I think it feels like a safe, supportive place, which is perhaps key. So Sherry, could you tell us, so Sherry went to the Leadership and Professional Development Diversity Now session, which I'm not going to speak for you. So if you could just tell us about who was leading the session and what the key points, I think it would be so great, it's, given who we've got on the call. Over to you, Sherry.
I'm going to look at the list so that I read the names properly. Naomi Oriokuma, I believe it is how you pronounce it. She spoke from London, has a very diverse background, worked in fashion, worked in a number of different industries and brought some great perspectives. Vanessa Vaughn West, who is at Lathrop GPM in Kansas City, and Dove Nirvana, who is at Townsend Hine. And then Reggie led the session. He too brought such great perspectives to it. But I think that there were some key points and key takeaways. So one thing that they taught us all is that the same is not always equal. So the idea was that there's more to the story behind the metric. So let's say that diversity, you really want to get your numbers right. You want to have the right representation in your organization. But even though you might have an associate, and it's a diverse group, the problem is that it's not always equal for that individual. And that's why it really was, the topic was diversity, equity, and inclusivity. So it's the same is not always equal. And I just thought that that was such a really key point about just reading the numbers. The other thing that they did at the end was fantastic, is they gave these sort of key takeaways. And one of the folks, I believe it was Vanessa, she said, you have to start in manageable pieces when you're working toward an inclusivity program within yourself, and equally within your firm or your organization. So the way to start is just decide on 2 immediate changes you're going to make. One that's personal, because if you don't take it on from the personal perspective, you're never going to be able to really enrich it within your organization. And I took that so to heart. And many folks who grew up sort of at the same time I did probably had experiences of challenges within their school system or within, their early pieces of their career. And I had one where my whole senior year of high school, we spent literally not going to school the full day because there had been race riots. For the entire year, we were closed down because of this. And my school asked me to be like think of it as a peer mentor kind of thing on this topic. And so it was just really touching because where were these people when I was in high school? I wish that we had had a session like this. And that was the other thing. They spoke about initiatives that you can get involved in, and equally what they're doing in their firms is that they're actually going even broader out into their community. It isn't just an internal thing. They're going broader out into the community and mentoring and raising ideas and awareness about legal as an option, because some of the individuals, the young kids, they don't have exposure to this. They don't see that the good work of a law firm, the important work of a law firm, could actually be a place that they could serve or a career path that they could attain. And so they have gone out into their community to just raise that awareness. So I loved how everyone was doing, these programs within their organizations, but equally outreach was much more broad than just that. Extending it externally was a key lesson. They also spoke about a couple of tools. So the Harvard Implicit tests that people, you can go there and take this on your own, and that is a really important way to start, just to understand your own bias on a number of different topics. And they also said that the results have been astonishing when they have taken a very deliberate approach to this. The one gal said that in 2 years, they have had the most successful recruiting strategy because they standardized it. And everybody asked the same questions. Everyone has to log the same, to those questions, has to log those findings. And so that the decision-making has many perspectives in it, but is equitable. So again, she said that, that progress is great. They've seen leaps and bounds. Even they do this with lateral hiring, not just associates, adding associates to the firm. The one firm is actually certified, the Mansfield certification for diversity and inclusion, and they're on their way to certifying Mansfield Plus. They also emphasize something which I thought, again, it was innate. We all know this, but that the clients are truly driving some of this, because there is this bit, they're making progress in their programs. Law firms are lagging behind, but that client requirement is truly driving the need to make this better, deeper, broader, wider, and more known across the firm, and how they're visible outside in their communities. So those are just some of the key takeaways. I highly encourage you all to watch the recording more than once, because there were just some great conversations.
That's
Sherry,
great.
let me add to that session was done live twice.
Was done
live twice. It was not a rebroadcast the second time. That panel agreed to be live twice in different time zones. And the two sessions were similar, but not identical. And so there's real benefit to being involved in both. We also had then a continuing diversity conversation yesterday after the second session. And we had about, 40 or 50 people in that 2-hour conversation. And the Harvard implicit bias was a big source of discussion, because many of you know Ginevra Saylor, who is on our board and is the board liaison to our we'll announce officially on Friday, but we're renaming it to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force, and is one of probably the kindest and most considerate human beings I've ever known. And I know Ginevra would say this herself. She was distressed at how she did in the implicit bias. She kind of like, I thought it was a better person than that. And I don't think it's about being a better person. I think it's about learning, right? And so we talked about that quite a bit. And actually, several of the members of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Task Force published an article recently in Peer-to-Peer about unconscious bias. If you have not seen that, I highly recommend it. It was Jillian Power and Debbie Ting, and I think Andy Morris really did a great job. The other person that, if you want to hear more about this, to talk to is Melanie Prevost from Vincent and Elkins, who was in this Diversity Continues conversation. The things they are doing around Mansfield at Vincent and Elkins are really forward thinking. They've had a lot of conversations, coaching that are really impressive. And she's been an important leader as another one of those women engineers in the room who has run into these things. And I think I thought that was an excellent summary. Sherry, I was in that too. But the conversation too, that we continued afterwards was incredibly valuable.
I think that's, I mean, that sounds, it's fascinating, but I do think that, you know, it's interesting you raised the clients, Sherry, because so I had a conversation about diversity with Jason Thomas at Cole Scott Cassane. So we were talking about diversity in the broader sense, both race and in that case, we were talking about racial diversity. And I think actually the time for patting ourselves on the back is pretty much over. And I feel like, you know, we need hard stats. You know, I feel like we need to really make commitments. Now is the time to make commitments. And it's interesting you bring up the client, because I think they're the ones that are driving that. So the clients that I referenced in my conversation with Jason were Microsoft and Intel, who are now giving their own stats in terms of, if you do not hit this level of diversity across these points, we will not instruct you. And I think we're cheering, you know, we're cheering, going, and I think that point you made about bias is an interesting one, and that's about being honest with ourselves, okay? Because I think that if we sort of fluff around the edges and don't have the conversations and don't, you know, and be frightened to talk about this stuff, then nobody's ever going to make progress. And I think that's fabulous that they're asking everybody to challenge their own, you know, their own understanding of each other. And it's only by having these conversations that we can start to drive things forward, I think.
And it's not just
Exactly.
stats, Caroline, it's matter teams. It's the clients want to see diverse people at the table, and they don't want them to just be sitting at the table. They want them to be talking. And yesterday in our G100 session, we had a client only session, and we were talking about you know, forward looking. One of the pieces of it was the pitch process and how that's changed in this virtual world. And one of the points, we had clients, so we had Amy Sellers from Cardinal Health, who's fabulous. If you've never talked to her, Florence Yee from Prudential, Jack Thompson from Santa Fe. And they were all three talking about the fact that there are certainly generational diversity opportunities here, because if there's greater comfort with technology, they can shine in the not in-person courtroom, in the not in-person deposition. They can shine in the not in-person pitch in a way that might be more difficult with people who aren't as comfortable with technology. And they talk about, the clients were talking about some of the really awful pitches they have seen in this virtual period, just because the people pitching, who are very good in person, don't know how to interact with the technology. And it was a great conversation. It really was.
Awesome. Well, look, so we've got Jeffrey Roach in the wings, ready to talk to us about professional development, public speaking. So can I just join? Everyone's welcome to stay or drop off as you wish. It's fabulous. You know, we learned yesterday that this is a fabulous free flowing, and you're welcome to stay. If you have to go, then we'll let you go. But I think everyone would join me in wishing Judi, you know, in just saying congratulations again. And you can't hear,
Congratulations, Judi.
you can't hear the round of applause, but if we
Can I just say, I want to just mention really two things that are really important. We talked about diversity and inclusion and the difficulty of being a woman in this in the world that we live in. One of the things that Judi does without even trying is she makes it safe for women to have a voice in those meetings, right? So if you've ever had the pleasure of working with her, you know that when you're in the room, she not only encourages the interaction, but you feel safe, right? So I think that's important, right? To give the women and other members of the staff in the room who don't have a voice, and to let them feel safe that they can speak. And it takes a great leader to do that. And I want to acknowledge Judi for that. The other thing that she does effortlessly, and I had the great pleasure of speaking with her at a session at ILTA, is when she's speaking about a topic, she doesn't need to practice or prep or have a lot of slides with a lot of words. What she taught me is just speak what you know, right? Speak what you know. And it just comes through and people understand, and you can deliver a message that way without a lot of fluff, fanfare. And so I want to acknowledge that, because I want to say that if there are more leaders like that in our industry, then we have just organically the ability to break down those barriers and to make people feel safe. And it's really challenging in technology, very much so. So again, I want to acknowledge Judi Flournoy today.